MAGA Republicans believe it is all about chaos, owning the libs, white grievance and anger. That's wrong. Governing is about making our lives better. In just one piece of legislation, Democratic senators took action to lower prescription drug prices, giving Medicare the ability to negotiate with Big Pharma, shifted tax burden from the middle class to the very wealthy, protected our future with the most sweeping climate change action in U.S. history. What do you want? Anger or results?
Good afternoon. Thank you for joining me for this bonus edition of Conversations with Tez. We're going to talk about the election today. And don't worry, it's still going to go live tonight because we have some other updates regarding some other things and some more regarding election to talk about. And like I told you last night, I'll also be bouncing around on different social media platforms, giving updates as they arise.
I think about taxes.
But coming from the dailysignal.com, 8 races to watch as ballots are counted. First one is Michigan governor race with Governor Gretchen Whitmer versus Tudor Dixon. Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer, a Democrat, is facing Republican challenger Tudor Dixon in Tuesday's gubernatorial election. Whitmer won the governorship in 2018 after defeating Republican State Attorney General Bill Schuette, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, with 53.3% of the vote, CNN reported. Inspired by her family, she's devoted her life to public service, governed through unprecedented colliding crisis, and remains focused on working with anyone to get things done that will make a difference in people's lives. And let us not forget that they tried to kidnap this woman, and she kept working through everything. Hey, Mr. Rogers, yes, I am feeling a bit better. Plus, I got coffee and Marvel, so we're going to get through this. Especially since this is going to be a multi-show day. And yes, I've had a whole lot of caffeine, so I'm a bit hyper. Second one is Pennsylvania Senate race. That is Lieutenant Governor John Fetterman versus Dr. Mehmet Oz. Can we stop calling him Dr. Oz? He's not even a real doctor. See, Oprah brought us some bullshit in the 90s and early 2000s. And she's not even backing Oz. I don't even think his daughter is backing him, but I digress. Pennsylvania Lieutenant Governor John Fetterman and Dr. Mehmet Oz are running for Pennsylvania's open Senate seat. Incumbent Senator Pat Toomey, Republican of Pennsylvania, is not running for re-election. I mean, January 6th will cause me not to want to run for re-election either. Fetterman, who suffered a stroke in May, won the lieutenant governor spot in 2018 with roughly 60% of the vote. He announced his Senate bid in February of 2021. In case you missed last night's show, Mehmet Oz, who had previously we know, been endorsed by Trump, did a rally over the weekend with Trump. Trump was not with him last night. He was in Ohio with J.D. Vance, and the reason why he was not in Pennsylvania, it's not because Trump favors Vance over Oz. Where the district where Oz is running, the past elections, most recent elections, have gone to the Democrats, like with ease. And they don't like Trump there. So Oz has slowly but surely had people who have never been associated with Trump or have recently distanced themselves from Trump kind of show up and uh, give him a stamp of approval. Oh, you're in the middle of ethics training. Hey, hey, hey. So the third race to pay attention to is New York governor race. Governor Kathy Hochul versus Representative Lee Zeldin. New York Governor Kathy Hochul, a Democrat, is pitted against Representative Lee Zeldin, Republican, New York, in Tuesday's New York governor election. Zeldin is a former New York State senator, and Hochul, assumed office on August 24th, 2021, after former Governor Andrew Cuomo, a Democrat, resigned because Drosky Cuomo couldn't keep it in his pants, nor could he keep his hands to himself. But, so, we'll see how that goes. Number 4, as we all know, Georgia gubernatorial race, Governor Brian Kemp versus Stacey Abrams. First of all, Georgia, let's make some clear and proper decisions this time around. Let's not drop the ball twice. Because you got 2 of them. Because the 5th one to watch is the Georgia Senate race with incumbent Senator Pastor Ralph Warnock versus idiot Herschel Walker. Yeah. Don't need to go into detail about either one of those. We know who should clearly be winning both of those. Abrams and Warnock. Abrams and Warnock. Abrams and Warnock. Abrams and Warnock. Georgia, you have too many counties that do not have proper OBGYN coverage. You just lost another trauma center, which gives you how many in a certain area? Housing assistance. No longer. Because your incumbent decided to play Russian roulette with government funds. Because he's playing more to the sycophants of his party than to the constituents that need to survive. The Florida governor's race. How big a win? Polling suggests that Florida Republican Governor Ron DeSantis will win big over Democrat and former Republican Governor Charlie Crist, perhaps even by double digits. The Real Clear Politics polling average has him beating Crist by 11.6 points. 538 shows a similar spread. The Cook Political Report says the race will likely be Republican. DeSantis famously reopened Florida during the COVID-19 pandemic, inspiring a slew of attacks from the left, but welcoming a large influx of Americans coming from other states. His Surgeon General, Dr. Joseph Ladapo, did not shy away from bucking the narrative on pandemic restrictions, and he has spearheaded efforts to examine whether controversial transgender medical interventions for children actually help or harm kids in the long term. Florida. Let's not forget the crux of your income, the snowbirds and Disney. Snowbirds, even before there was a Disney in Florida, you had their income from them, still paying property taxes on properties that they have there, them coming down. You lose that, you tank. I need y'all to learn your actual history so you can stop this Groundhog Day of things, because it's utterly, utterly ridiculous. You were the original Hollywood, but you lost that because of your politics and your utter stupidity. Okay, number 7, the Ohio Senate race, J.D. Vance versus Tim Ryan. J.D. Vance couldn't cut it here in Kentucky. J.D. Vance is a con man. J.D. Vance will keep moving state to state to state, just like Marjorie Taylor Greene will move from county to county to county to try to stay in office, to try to get in office. Arizona gubernatorial race, Kari Lake versus Katie Hobbs. Let me remind you all of something. When Trump was elected, Kari Lake, a former member of the media, showed her disdain and dislike for Trump. See, a lot of these GOP now Trumplicans in 2016 would have been considered by the GOP rhinos, which means Republicans that just don't agree with them. But when they see the power that Trump yields and wields, and that he's literally being worshipped by sycophants, by his constituents, they want that. That shows that they're not here, power of the people. They're not here for small government. They are here to get rich quick. They are here to fulfill their power-hungry fantasies.
You probably know Spectrum Internet has speeds up to 1 gig. Well, you work here, but have you heard about Spectrum Advanced Wi-Fi? Once you're connected, you're protected because it comes with state-of-the-art security, like this, but for the internet. You can let me in now.
So those are the 8 to watch. But don't worry. They've resurrected their annual election tricks. And by they, I mean the GOP. Take a look.
And vote on November 8th as late in the day as possible. If everyone could stand in long, long lines at 6 o'clock, that would actually help us.
Translation: clock the line late. So when Democrats show up to vote after work, it will appear to be too long and they will go home.
Now, keep in mind, if you are in line before polling ends, you can still vote, regardless of how long the line is. Also, should you have any issues while in line or while attempting to vote, I keep clicking the wrong things here, you can contact 866-687-8683. This information is also on my Facebook fan pages and on Instagram and on my TikTok page. That number, once again, is 866-687-8683. And that is the polling protection line. And if you are unsure where your polling place is, you can text VOTE to 90975. That is, you can text the word VOTE to 90975. Once again, text VOTE to 90975. And if you are in Kentucky, make sure as you're voting, vote no on Amendments 1 and 2. Amendment 1 would allow the Kentucky State Legislature to call itself into special session, a move intended to weaken the power of the state's Democratic governor. We don't want to do that to Andy Beshear. We like him. And Amendment 2 proposes amending the state constitution to ensure that it does not protect the right to an abortion. That means there will be 0 exceptions. 0. Women will not have bodily autonomy within the Commonwealth of Kentucky. And this medical procedure that can be life-saving will no longer exist. And as always, please, please, please make sure you check out the links within the description of this show. And if you're watching via Facebook or YouTube, there's also a link in the comment section. Please peruse that as well. Now, there's one huge topic that has been used by GOP and their talking heads to try to sway people in voting in favor of GOP candidates. And that is that children were identifying as furries. And if you don't know what a furry is, Google it. Because it's not a gender identity. I would break it down on this channel, but I'm not trying to get a community guidelines violation. And Joe Rogan, the darling of the conservatives, had to just admit he pulled an Alex Jones. He lied. Let's take a look.
So he lied. He put schools in danger, children in danger. He put teachers in danger. He fed a right-wing conspiracy like he did over and over and over again with the COVID vaccines, and he lied to you. And now, after the damage is done, he comes out and admits that he fucking lies, and then tries to laugh it off. Joe Rogan lied about the kitty litter shit. I discussed this on my platform last fucking year, but he's the reason why it keeps getting repeated. And he just lied. And continued to lie until he finally got fucking called out on it, and he had to admit it on his show.
Now see, and before you go, but Taz, why is it so believable? Why does it spread so quickly? One, the GOP loves the undereducated and people who want to and are willing and need to blame others for their lack of wealth, instead of holding those accountable that are preventing them from reaching their goals or even having a step in the right direction to their goals. It's just pull yourself up by the bootstraps. Well, how are you supposed to do that when somebody's cut the straps? But here's the thing. The truth of the matter is there are go kits in a lot of schools around the country, which is heartbreaking. Because should these schools be placed on lockdown for extended periods of time because of an active shooter within or outside of the school, there are little pop-up tents, a bucket, and little bags of kitty litter in the event that these children need to go to the restroom. So to not add insult to injury, to have them soil themselves. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's funny what Mark said about the Democrats being optimistic. I've spent the last
the disinformation and misinformation. Let's take a look at this season's ad, then we'll get into more you need to know before heading to the polls or while you're standing in line for the polls. And be sure to like and share this with anybody that you know that is on their way to the polls today or has been on the fence. See you in 2 and 2.
Style. Style is the answer to everything. A fresh way to approach a dull or dangerous thing. To do a dangerous thing with style is what I call art.
Excuse Sir Puppers in the background. I don't know what he's playing with, but he's having a good old time, so we're just going to leave him be. I heard someone ask on another social media platform, they've watched Ted Cruz recently get so much hate. Who's voting for him? And that is my question. How is he winning elections? How is he winning elections? Actually, as I say this out loud, I can answer your question. Look at where he's getting the hate from. Most of the time, the people booing him and holding him accountable are outside of his voting purview. Now, this time, it was on his own stomping grounds. But Texas, is your grid fixed? This is the same man who left you high and dry. This is the same man that would rather invoke ignoring the guidelines of the fire department and fire marshals regarding your children at school than propose proper gun legislation. But hey, I'm just here to inform you. Who am I to tell you who to vote for? Coming from the Associated Press, what to expect at polling places this year. This year's midterms are playing out against the backdrop of former President Donald Trump's persistent falsehoods about losing the 2020 election, a relentless campaign that will have implication for voters across the country as they cast their ballots. And as I saw last night in the wee hours of this morning, there are people out there that are still fighting to protect the lie that the last election was rigged. Although there were members of the GOP that were voted in. So if Democrats or non-Republicans win, it's voter fraud. But if Republicans win, it's a red wave. Make it make sense. But let's go on. The baseless claims and conspiracy theories have prompted new laws in several Republican-led states and sowed distrust of voter machines. They have led conservative groups sympathetic to Trump's claims to challenge voters' registration status and recruit observers and workers for polling places. Intimidators. They're recruiting intimidators. All this could complicate voting that is now underway in many states through Election Day on November 8th. For most voters, casting a ballot is still likely to be trouble-free, but the new voting procedures and political dynamics since the last presidential election are already having the effect in some parts of the country. Republican legislators have created a variety of fresh restrictions on registration and voting. Trump's refusal to accept his loss and the peddling of false claims by him and his allies have stirred anger among his supporters, and some of that has been channeled into harassment and even death threats directed towards election officials. It's also resulted in direct violence against people. Let's not forget the attack on Paul Pelosi. There was another individual that was beaten and bloodied in their own backyard. Another person had, excuse me, gunshots through their home and their parents' home. This is ridiculous. Utterly ridiculous. But let's take a look at these fans of the GOP, because that's all I can call them at this point. Fans of the GOP.
The inflation and how gas is up by, God knows what state you're in, you're paying a lot of money. Sure. How's that affected you?
It's really affected my wife more than anything. She's keeping the regular job, and so gas and everything goes up. And my traveling on the state is around the country is funded by $5-10 tips from people, and the money I make on roofs and things. But so really, it hasn't affected me too much.
The party that touts itself as being anti-socialism sure does use a whole lot of socialism in order to survive. And this grown-ass, able-bodied man, as my granddaddy would call a hard knuckle, is having his wife hold down the fort, support the family, and sustain their home and livelihood while he travels the country as a caricature so he doesn't miss a Trump rally. And what is Trump rallying for? Because the moment he announces his presidency, the RNC has stated they are no longer paying his legal fees. Yes, the RNC is paying the legal fees for the self-professed, self-proclaimed, unsubstantiated billionaire who had not turned a profit in his entire career until he made the presidency, aka the White House, a cash cow. And how was he able to do it? Because Taz, that goes against the Constitution. Yes, it does. But no one checked him. They allowed him to set fire to the document that they claim they hold just as near and dear as their bastardized, ill-translated, rewritten Bibles.
Well, whenever you look at the Senate, I agree it's going to be close.
Hi, puppers. Get down.
Participate in the election cycle because of the importance of it. I look at momentum. The polls are closed.
Here, go get a snack. Sorry about that. Also coming from the Associated Press, Vocabulary of Voting, a glossary guide to the 2022 midterms. What's behind some of the notable nomenclature facing voters trying to decipher the whole who, what, why, when, where of casting their ballots this year? Here are some key terms to know ahead of the midterm elections. Advanced voting. The term advanced voting is preferred in states where voters have several options to vote before election day. It means a few different things: mail-in ballots, absentee ballots, and early in-person voting. Absentee ballots, voters who can't go to the polls on election day itself often vote absentee, getting a ballot either by mail or in person and casting it ahead of time. 27 states and the District of Columbia offer no excuse absentee ballots. This means that any voter can request and cast an absentee or mail ballot without providing a reason. AP Votecast. First used in 2018, AP Votecast is a survey of the American electorate conducted by NORC, N-O-R-C, at the University of Chicago for Fox News and the Associated Press. Votecast is not an exit poll. Canvassing the vote. After votes are cast, officials check list of voters against the number of ballots cast and research any discrepancies, which often are due to clerical errors or a mistake. Certification. Votes also have to go through the certification process at the local and then state levels, either involving a board composed of statewide officials such as the Secretary of State and Governor, or solely the Secretary of State. Your Secretary of State is who is over voting in your state. A lot of you all are confused because y'all keep putting and accusing people of things that aren't in their job description. And if you haven't noticed, no one in the government is exceeding their job description. Hell, they barely fulfill their job descriptions. Early returns. As votes are cast and counted across the country, they are tabulated and reported before races themselves are called. Early returns often do not provide an accurate reflection of the ultimate outcome, especially in states that take days or weeks to count votes cast in advance and provisional ballots. Exit polls. In the U.S., exit polling is a survey of voters conducted by the National Election Pool, a network of broadcasters using a methodology based on in-person interviews at polling places. Late earlies. Some advance ballots don't get turned in or received until Election Day. These late earlies are also known in states like Arizona, can often lead to vote counts taking several days to complete in some places, although the state does permit both ballot processing and counting prior to the poll close. And this right here is why we may not know the full outcome in Georgia until mid-December. Possibly. Keep that in mind. Mail voting. 8 of the states that offer no excuse absentee voting automatically mail a ballot to every eligible voter without necessitating a request or application. That doesn't mean that there aren't in-person polling locations too, but most people in these places vote by mail. Majority and plurality. A majority is more than half of the votes cast. Plurality is the largest number of votes, but less than a majority. In states like Georgia, where a candidate needs a majority to win, runoff elections may be necessary to determine who ultimately wins the contest. Overvote and undervote. An overvote is when a voter selects too many candidates in a given race. Conversely, an undervote means that a voter hasn't made a selection for each office on the ballot, leaving some blank. Poll monitors, poll watchers, citizen observers. The term poll monitors, poll watchers, and citizen observers are interchangeable and they can be partisan or nonpartisan. Nonpartisan poll watchers are trained to monitor polling places and local election offices that tally the votes, looking for irregularities and ways to improve the system. Partisan poll watchers are those who favor particular parties, candidates, or ballot propositions and monitor voting places and local election offices to ensure fairness to their candidates or causes. Since the 2020 election, a handful of states passed laws limiting the restrictions that local election officials can place on poll watchers, giving them greater access to ballot counting and processing. So that's just the basis. Probably within about 2 hours, you'll be able to catch me either on Instagram or TikTok, and we'll go over some more things and some updates, because more intense coverage will be happening across all media outlets. But until then, I'll see you tonight at 9 p.m. for our regular Talk About It Tuesday. And don't forget to look out for today's audio podcast, Tastastic Tuesdays. And as always, thank you for watching, and each one teach one, each one reach one. Till tonight.